Hello and welcome back to our next episode on BMI, Bicara Minggu ini. And in this fourth episode, I'm honoured to have my very first member of the parliament in the show. A good old friend when I first met him in 2015 for an interview when I was with Malaysia Kini then. So at that time, he was the best debater in the region, a vocal critic of the then government under Najib Razak. Fast forward today, in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic and political polemics, he is still among the youngest legislators in the Malaysian parliament. When he was elected as Muar MP and subsequently the youngest member of the cabinet in the Pakatan Harapan administration. We have here Syed Saddiq, Syed Rahman, and he came to the office at the age of 26, rarely seen in the country after so many decades in Malaysia. Challenging the old ways, we have also seen many fresh policies brought to the table from the perspectives of a young Malaysian, such as Syed Saddiq. So YB Syed Saddiq here is quite a firebrand of a young politician. So thank you for joining the show, despite your busy schedule, helping your constituents in Muar. And I understand we are in the midst of a flood situation in Johor.
Yeah.
So in spite of all the political uncertainties and changes we've seen over the past few months in Malaysia, how have you been coping? How do you manage in serving your constituents on the ground?
The good thing is, since I left government, I now have more time to spend at my constituent. So back then, I'll try my best to go down about once a week or once every 2 weeks. Now, minimum of once or twice a week. I'll be down in Muar, and therefore being able to spend more time back to service my constituency. So I spend a lot of time going down to Muar, even during PKP. Obviously, to follow the SOP when I do go down. At the same time, this is the time to indulge in as many hobbies as possible and to learn new things. I've been learning how to cook during BKP or MCO. I've been reading so many books, finishing so many documentaries, watching masterclass online. But in the end, being out of government is not that bad of an idea. The point in which your conscience is clear, and at the same time, you just find a different sense of direction to move forward and to ensure that the nation building agenda will always be in the front line and not one of personal interest.
I think sometimes, being a politician, you're still human. I remember when the fall of Pakatan Harapan administration, what went through your mind during that first week?
I was truly frustrated because it was avoidable. There were a lot of things which we could have done. The distrust which divided us played a role in it, and I thought we could have managed it better. At the same time, I think obviously the backstabbing in politics is tragic and unfortunate, and it truly weakens one's faith in our democratic system. That if this can happen once, it can happen many more times. And what is the end? What's the end goal? How do we move forward? How do we give confidence in young voters that their vote will actually matter, and that money, power, positions will not be used as bargaining chips, as a way to ferment political power and interests. So I remember when the government fell. It was a combination of frustration, anger, but I knew that I had to work really hard to ensure that we can move forward, because I always believe that the journey for change, reforms, perjuangan itu belum selesai. It is not over. There are many more things which we need to do for young Malaysians. When we forwarded the 6.5 billion stimulus package, Malaysia at Work, which was supposed to create about 350,000 quality jobs for young people, I really wanted to see that through. I wanted to see the PTPTN reforms carried through, as Cabinet has already agreed to it literally 2 weeks before the Sheraton move. I wanted to see Undi 18 and automatic voter registration take place, as I've already successfully tabled it in Parliament and agreed upon. So there are many other things. I want to see the decriminalization of drug addiction, which particularly afflicts young people in Malaysia. So there are so many things which I want to see. So when all of this get backtracked because of political infighting, it's truly tragic, And I just hope that young people will not be disenchanted and but this will further energize them to move forward, to join politics, to be the change makers, to be the change they want to see. So in the end, the politics of the past, political infightings, the politics of power and privileges can be taken down with youth enthusiasm and power in shaping a new Malaysia.
I think we're also seeing quite an interesting development over the past 4 months, and there are also disenfranchisement towards the political democratic system itself, and we're also seeing young people taking up the challenge, what they do now with Parliament Digital.
It's brilliant.
By Liga Democratic with Undi Malaysia and all that. Look at the young people taking a platform. But when I go to the ground, one of the few things where the young people, those who are age 25 and below, one of the things they tell me is that I don't want to join a political party. It's full of a lot of poison, it's very toxic, but they still want, they are aiming to be lawmakers. So what do you say to them?
I mean, reality is politics is poisonous and toxic. When I first joined, I was filled with idealism. But as I got into the system, I noticed how much change was needed. And we cannot rely on one person or a small group of people. In reality, we need to be the majority and have a strong will to reform that corrupt system. If young idealistic people choose to sit by the sidelines and complain and critic, they will not be able to shape that new system. They will not be able to reform the system. They will not be able to challenge the corrupt system. So my suggestion to them, if you acknowledge that politics is dirty and corrupted, you join politics to clean it up. You don't sit by the sideline. Do not just be a silent critic. Because if we just sit by the sideline and young idealists choose to just remain quiet, that means politics will forever be dominated by the old, the corrupt, those who only join politics for power, money and greed. And in the end, we will never be able to move Malaysia forward to a better path. So do not be disenchanted. Do not be afraid. Join politics, because as we have more and more young people coming in the front lines, that's when we will be able to shape our future, the future which we all deserve.
So on that point, when you mentioned about that too though, when asking for young people to go out, now, are they going alone or should they be setting up their own party? Or what about you? Because now at the situation, you're being booted out from Bersatu, the party you founded, and it's tragic, for a founding member to be booted out together with Team Mahathir.
Yeah.
So I propose to you, why don't you set your own party? Now, young people will join you, and led by young people, those who are age 40 below. Why not?
I mean, I don't regret what I did, which in the end led to me being booted out. If I could go back in time and have the benefit of hindsight, I'd still pick the same path which I picked today, despite knowing that I will no longer become a minister, that I will lose many privileges. But again, as I mentioned, in the end, every person will be confronted with difficult choices. And for me, I faced it during the past few months. But it keeps on reminding me why I joined politics, which is not for power and position. Bersatu is very nostalgic for me because, as you mentioned, it's my first party. I never joined any other party before. I was a co-founder of Bersatu among the 7. And at the same time, I joined at such a young age, at 23 years old, and given the opportunity to lead the youth wing of Bersatu, where we built the youth wing from a membership of 10 to now a membership of more than 200,000 solid members across Malaysia. But again, a party is merely a vehicle, an instrument which represents the will of the people, the point in which the party no longer serves the interests of the people, the point in which the party betrays its very own cause and constitution. Then it's time for self-introspection for all party members to go through. I will still challenge the unfair removal and expulsion of my membership. However, I think it's also important for us to look forward, as you rightfully pointed out. Then what's the next vehicle? Because again, political vehicle relies on the support of the people, not just on party leaders and party members. So now we'll keep the option open and see how things are like. But I think what's most important now is to focus to get back government, to ensure that the rule of law is upheld, and that the reform agenda which we like to forward will be continued and we must act as a strong opposition to ensure that any abuse of power, mismanagement can be challenged by a united opposition. So let's focus on that first. What vehicle, what options, what routes we can take. I think it's still important for us to discuss this in length. But one thing to me which is clear is, I think that the days where we keep on relying on the politics of the past and the politicians of the past and the old is over. We can't keep on relying on the same formula. We need to start looking into younger leaders. We need to trust younger leaders as well. And I mean, we cannot afford to keep on fighting the same battles which have lasted for more than 20, at times even 30 years. Same figures, same issues, same distrust. And unfortunately, young politicians are tragically trapped in the struggles of the past. We should never forget that politics is not a battle of personalities, but it's a battle of ideas, a contest of ideas, ideals. And I think that's what young people want. If we keep on engaging in a battle of personalities, of past historic issues and disagreements and disenchantments, then I think we are pushing young people out of politics and we are allowing the old narrative to dominate over Malaysia.
We learn from history and say that the early heydays of Merdeka and the formation of Malaysia, there were many young politicians. At that time, they were at the political front. Even guess how old was YB Lim Kit Siang at the time of 1959?
It's 25, right?
26 as Secretary General.
Yeah.
That's exactly your age. Of course, at your age, you were naik president lah, kan?
Yep.
But why is it different now? The prevalence of this political hegemony and patronage is even more prevalent. One of the recent discussions with Dr. Nazri Noor from UKM.
Yeah.
So we are currently facing a neo-feudalistic democratic society where we're easily falling back to it, and that has been easily manipulated. Looking at the Malay political psyche and communications itself, what do you think?
I think the politics of patronage is deep in Malaysia, and it is unfortunate, and it's particularly tragic among Malay political systems and parties and establishments. I know this because when we founded Bersatu, we noticed how prevalent it was, especially when we are in government. You look at party elections and how much money is needed, and let's not hide the fact that money must be spent. It's the reality of things, and that's why in cabinet I pushed hard for the Political Funding Act to be tabled in Parliament. It's supposed to be tabled in March. And again, because of the damn Sheraton move, a lot of reforms agenda were put in the back burner. I mean, even 2-term limits, Political Funding Act, many things were about to be tabled in Parliament, but again, a lot of things sacrificed, and now it will never see the light of day. So I think we cannot just keep on talking about politics of patronage and how bad it is. I think we need to come up with solutions. And that's why we wanted to table the Political Funding Act, so that there will be transparency in political funding, so that in the end there will be an SOP which every party can follow, and there will no longer be the intimidation and oppression of party funders. I mean, businessmen are free to fund whoever they want, and we need to respect that, because that is a part of our democratic system. But I mean, if we don't even dare or have the moral courage to table the Political Funding Act, then how are we going to clean up political corruption in Malaysia? I remember when I was a part of the negotiation process. I think you were part of Majlis President Pakatan Harapan. You remember Majlis President Pakatan Harapan gave me the responsibility to negotiate and discuss of this, and I presented the paper at the Presidential Council, and finally had a long discussion in Cabinet where an agreement was formed. But even then, there were many opposition to it. There were some members who said we can't do this because then funders will be intimidated when there is a change in government, and I noticed that's exactly what's happening now, which is tragic. And at the same time, there is a very wide interpretation of what political funding is. As you see, Musaman can say 400 million ringgit in his bank account is political funding, while another person can say that even serving food for your supporters is indeed political corruption. So, I mean, we need to resolve all these issues. But the point which I like to make is that in order for us to dismantle the patronage system, it's not just about voter education, You need concrete reform-based systems in place to ensure that we can weed out political corruption. Political Funding Act is critical. But I believe behind all of that, you need to get more and more young people with the right willpower to not join politics for money and positions, so that in the end, when we have more idealists joining, more reform-minded people joining, people in the who have the right heart to join, I think that's when we can clean up the system once and for all, challenge the patronage culture, and show that money will never dominate Malaysian politics.
So just now you were mentioning a little bit about political funding bill.
Yeah.
Of course, it is, again, you repeatedly use the word tragic. It is tragic, it is tragic. It is. But it should not stop there. So can you give more details about the political funding bill that was discussed in the cabinet, and how are you going to take this to revive it back? Of course, the current administration under Pakatan Nasional will not consider this, but don't you think it shouldn't be just left alone and all the work has been done?
Yeah, you are absolutely right. And I mean, it's not like we did it on our own, short sendiri. We actually negotiated with all parties, including parties in opposition then, who are now in government.
And there are a lot of stakeholders who are being activists towards all this.
Yeah, I mean, Datuk Saifuddin Abdullah, Azmin Ali, Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin, Zuraida Kamaruddin, who were part of the previous government and now part of this government, they were part of the cabinet which approved this, right? I mean, it was formulated by GIACC under the great leadership of Tan Sri Abu Qasim. So, I mean, I don't think there's any reason for them to postpone it or to cancel it. I think that's good. There should be bipartisan support, and if it is stable in Parliament, I'll be sure to support and endorse it. I mean, I will not reject it just because we want to challenge Tan Sri Muhyiddin's numbers. No, good things must be supported. I need to rise above the politics of divisions, especially when we can find a common ground to move Malaysia forward. So I hope that there will be more members of parliament, there will be more Malaysians pressuring for this to take place and to happen, because if it doesn't, then we will forever be trapped in the politics of the past.
So we'll be expecting an additional 7 million young voters in the year 2023. It might be earlier with the snap election. And looking at this, right, as I mentioned earlier, there is some disenfranchisement, but also we can see some movement of political activism without using any platforms, especially political parties.
Yep.
So what's your strategy? These are the huge bulk of new voters. They're not loyal to any political parties. They are looking for a better Malaysia. What about the end, trying to end the politics of race, political parties based on race? Of course, people will start questioning you. The party you founded is also based on race. But how are you going to, what is your strategy on that?
I remember when we founded Bersatu, one of the important preconditions I placed to join is for me to be able to appoint also non-booming EXCO members, and also to ensure that the associate membership system is created within Bersatu so that appointments can be made, not just from the Malay community. While I agree that this is imperfect, however, it is a step to something bigger. However, obviously I didn't expect for things to spiral out of control to the point that only a mono-ethnic narrative is taken until the point that the division led to the collapse of Pakatan Harapan overall. Not just because of that, but also because of distrust among political leaders, and obviously the complicity of UMNO, PAS and other opposition parties then. So I think moving forward, if we get more and more young people in, and as you rightfully pointed out, there'll be an additional 7.8 million young voters included in the electoral roll with the historic Undi 18 constitutional amendment. I think that's when you see politics becoming more multiracial, moderate, multi-religious, because young people care about issues, care about policies. They care less about race and religion. They want to see their lives get better. They want to see better quality of education. They want to ensure that cost of living is not high. They want to get affordable housing. They want to get a good job. These are what young people want. And they do not care or care less about race and religion. Whichever party and politician can serve their needs, that will be the party which will win the GE, who will win on the backs of young people.
I will come to Pakatan Harapan and Pakatan Harapan Plus later. Now, The corrupt politicians are getting free jail card now. Jail free. It's like playing Monopoly. And some would say this is a new normal. While we're seeing journalists, activists, lawmakers like yourself getting hauled up for investigations. Hopefully I don't get investigated for interviewing you, right? You know, or even asking questions
Al
like why
Jazeera was called up, so maybe you might be called up as well. Have
Oh
fun.
my god. Is Malaysia Baru rolling back to old Malaysia? Or some would say this is a return of the era of Jahiliyah in Malaysia.
I mean, it's tragic. I mean, I'm pretty sure deep down, Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin doesn't want this, right? I mean, I'm pretty sure he has his own sets of ideals. However, when he aligns himself with some of the corrupt in UMNO and gets overpowered by them, as UMNO is the biggest and largest party in government, so that's when many new problems arise, which will be beyond his control. I mean, you see today, after more than 100 days of Perikatan Nasional, I mean, the top leaders of UMNO consistently attack the legitimacy of their very own government. I mean, today again, the Deputy President of UMNO said that it's time to just dissolve Parliament.
Even a member of the cabinet is asking for
Ismail
YB,
Sabri, senior
Ismail
cabinet.
Sabri, even Khairi Jamaluddin.
Yeah. So I mean, if this keeps on happening, I thought the reason which they use to take down Pakatan Harapan to form this new government is for there to be political stability. Heck, I think this government is even less stable than Pakatan Harapan. So I think when you encounter this problem, then I truly sympathise with Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin. I know he might mean well. However, I think he's trapped with the current situation. But either way, I think Malaysians must focus on policies and issues which concern them. So while there will be the politics of the elites, you know, you discuss about numbers, discuss about seats, discuss about, you know, MPs here and there jumping, I think young people should just keep on pressuring for issues which concern them. Demand for more job subsidy, demand for a greater coverage of the employment insurance scheme, demand for a better public transportation, demand for quality education and greater subsidy in TVET. Demand for all these things and make sure that we get our voices heard so that whoever gets to power, regardless of which party, which politician, our demands must be met. If not, they will be booted out. That should be the focus.
We will come to a lot of all these the economic policies, even Malaysians at Work, the one you mentioned earlier, and it was launched at the end of last year during Budget 2020. What now in Pakatan Harapan or Pakatan Harapan Plus? The deadlock never got resolved, and now it got worse as Tun Mahathir refused to talk to Anwar and PKR. During his recent interview, he doesn't want to talk to him anymore. So what will Tun Mahathir or yourself or other former Bersatu MPs will do next?
I think I just want to correct one thing. Tun Dr. Mahathir has always opened its doors to PKR and Datuk Sri Anwar. You can check with the top leaders, as DAP and Amanah have consistently mentioned, that we gave way to Datuk Sri to try form a government to see if he can get a majority. But at the same time, he has been rebuffed many times. And only then did he respond to the rebuff made by PKR. But, I mean, I don't want to talk much about what Tun Dr. Mahathir thinks or what Datuk Sri Anwar thinks. That is the past. These are all politicians who keep on fighting about the same thing over and over and over again. Datuk Sri Anwar rejects Tun Dr. Mahathir. Tun Dr. Mahathir rejects Datuk Sri Anwar. This battle is a battle 20 years ago. How much longer are we going to fight on the same issue over and over and over again? What about the fate of young people in Malaysia? I mean, heck, I'm so angry with Pakatan Harapan because they keep on focusing on who the hell should be the next PM, but they don't care about more than 800,000 Malaysians who are unemployed at the moment and the unemployment crisis which is to come. They don't care that the fact that when the loan moratorium ends in September, you'll see businesses closing down. You'll see more jobs being lost. You see businesses declaring bankrupt. What are we going to do? What is our formula? What is our alternative? What does the public see us doing now? Oh, who's the PM? Who's the PM? How much longer? That's the only thing. Infighting, and more infighting. What about the young politicians, PKR? What about the young politicians in Amanah, DAP, who want to see policies, who want to see reforms, but they are trapped, and they are trapped because all people, due to their ego, are fighting over and over again, crazy to become PM or DPM or ministers. That should not matter. What matters is people's issues. Cost of living, transportation, education, jobs, and more jobs. If we keep on getting trapped in this battle, then we do not deserve to be in government. Then stop blaming. Stop blaming Tan Sri Muhyiddin, stop blaming Azmin, stop blaming UMNO PAS. We should blame ourselves for getting to where we are at today. We keep on fighting for one another. We were the ones who sought discord against one another. Yes, obviously, Azmin has his sense, Tan Sri has his sense, Hamzah has his sense. But to say that we are clean, that we had no role in the collapse of our very own government, is a big, blatant lie. You know, the distrust was sought at the very beginning, when PKR leaders started attacking Tun, asking him to step down. And then at the same time, when some in Tun's office, like Syed Ma'arif, his former Polsec, maneuvering here and there to ensure that numbers can be gained so that Anwar cannot become PM. So distrust among one another was there. And what did we do? We just acted as if the problem did not exist. And that's frustrating. I mean, you were there in the last Majlis President Pakatan Harapan, right? Outside we'll fight like mad. In public, in the media. And then when suddenly enter Majlis President, everyone becomes friends. Oh no, actually there's nothing, we agree. That's why I didn't like to just keep quiet. I said, no, we confront our issues in a meeting. Don't fight outside in the public. But in meetings, we suddenly hide our issues, which is untrue.
I remember you mentioned in the meeting, if you want to fight, you should fight in a meeting.
Yeah.
Then you show your solidarity out to the media and the public.
Exactly. And that's why...
that's the other way, right? I mean, for the past year, we are seeing statements after statements, infighting. I think a lot of political observers are saying this is not the act of UMNO and PAS. This is internal implosion that led to the fall of Pakatan Harapan.
Yeah.
So reflecting 22 months, I think... those incidents that happened, what has happened, had happened. I think moving forward, you know, you had that 22 months in the Pakatan Harapan government as the youth and sports minister. So how has it been? And, you know, what are the things when you reflect back? You know, maybe one day you'll be there. You're seen as one of the potential ones. Maybe one day you'll be PM, maybe.
Again, it's not about position, but again, the battle and the journey is not over. Perjuangan itu belum selesai. And that's what frustrates me. Because while we got 3 critical constitutional amendments in, a historic bipartisan constitutional amendments.
Unanimous vote, right?
Unanimous. I mean, it was the first times in Malaysian history where bipartisanship won. Which will get 7.8 million young Malaysians the right to vote, and therefore tilting political power in the hands of young people. But there will be a lot more things. I want to see the Malaysia at Works program being implemented well. I want to see better jobs insurance schemes for young people. I want to see PTPTN reforms as has been agreed, pushed in cabinet for more than a year, and finally agreed 2 weeks before Sheraton moved, and now no discussion at all about PTPTN. What's the discussion about? Do we have the numbers? Tan Sri side is doing the same. Our side is doing the same. We are both guilty, and the public suffers, right? Young people lose out. So I think in that 22 months, there were many things which we were able to push through, but there are many other things which have not been realised. Political Funding Act, as I told, decriminalisation of drug addiction. More than 70% of those in prison due to drug addiction, none other than young people, and come from the Malay community, and come from those who are most underprivileged economically. You know, so what are we doing to help them? What are we doing to fight for them? Instead of throwing them in prisons, we need to ensure that we have a more therapeutic way in dealing with things, you know, a more health-based way in dealing with things. So there are many other things which we should have done and we must do. You know, I mean, I think what frustrates me is that a lot of these reforms kept on getting postponed. I was lucky because finally Undi 18 was accepted. Something so obvious took me 1 year to convince cabinet. Heck, I thought it should have been agreed during the first cabinet meeting because it was a part of our manifesto. There are many other things. Putting MACC under parliament. Stop you weaponizing MACC for political power and interest. ensure, for example, that Parliament becomes an independent institution. Make sure that all member of parliaments get equal allocations. Back then I remember I brought this up in cabinet. I fought for it. Most people say, oh no, you cannot be too idealistic, Saddiq. You cannot do it immediately. Back then we got 0. Now at least we're giving BN 100,000 or something. At least it's a lot more than what we received before. Nothing. Sure, there was an improvement. Could we improve a lot more? We could have. Right? We could have done so much better. If we had done that early, then we won't see members of parliament jumping here and there all the time, because now winner takes all. You form government, and if you are in opposition, you don't jump, you lose 3.5 million ringgit every year for your kawasan. I mean, so there was 2 terms, the 2-term limit for prime ministership. I mean, it's so obvious, right? It doesn't take billions of ringgit, it just takes political will. And finally, when we're about to table it in March, again,
the tragic thing happened.
So, I mean, there were so many things which should have been done faster. And if it needs bulldozing, we should bulldoze it. I mean, because now, I think we are filled with regret. And young politicians who really want to see this are filled with regrets. And again, the people lose out.
Yeah, the biggest loser will be the people who voted in 2018. So, look, just moments ago, the World Bank issued a report on the Malaysian Economic Monitor.
Yeah,
things are not doing pretty well for all of us. I mean, joblessness, and a lot more will be coming. And we're seeing GDP will drop to 3.8, something like that. So earlier on, we did talk about Malaysians at Work policy. So what happened to it now? It was aimed at addressing unemployment. I remember you fought in a meeting, and then you had a what do you call that? Double up with YB Guan Eng in a meeting, and then going against Wadi Azmin at that time. Remember?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a joke. It's not a joke.
He wasn't agree. He didn't agree.
He didn't agree.
And then you double up with YB Guan Eng, and it went up. Well, we don't know what happened to it now, lah. Now we're actually facing greater recession. It's even worse than Great Depression. It's the worst ever since the formation of Malaysia. What do you think will be a better policy to address this? But what do you think? I mean, one of the things that was mentioned in the World Bank report on Malaysia is that our social security system, the policy itself, to protect Malaysians at risk, is very modest compared to a lot of Scandinavian countries. Of course, their tax system is very different. What do you think about revamping the social security system to address these unemployment issues?
There should be. As you rightfully pointed out, we do have the employment insurance scheme, but it's not enough. There are still large groups of Malaysians who are carved out from that very system. And at the same time, when we did introduce Malaysia at Work, a 6.5 billion job stimulus, which was supposed to create 350,000 quality jobs in 5 years. Again, now we have not heard what happened to that very policy, despite the fact that it was passed in last budget. But there have been some good things which this government has done. I mean, through the Prihatin package to ensure that those who are unemployed, to give subsidy,
Salary,
job subsidies, job subsidies to companies to ensure that they maintain their workers and do not just lay them off. I think this is just one of the extensions of the Malaysia at Work scheme. But we want to see not only is this continued, but you need to pump in a lot of money into it, right? Because now it might not be that bad. And even at there are about 800,000 Malaysians who are unemployed, when the loan moratorium ends in September, can you imagine what will happen to businesses, especially small businesses then? The compounding interest, the loans which must be serviced and paid.
I think they did mention compounding interest will not be implemented, right?
Yeah. When I say after that, because after that, when the loan moratorium is done, then they will be. Then you will have to start servicing your loans. And if businesses have not improved then, or if the business climate has not improved then, they will suffer to a great extent, and that's when you see a lot of businesses closing down, bankruptcy, job losses. So I think we must be ready for that. And the last thing which we want is that the politics which we're facing today will extend up until September, where people still discuss about numbers, people still discuss about who's the next PM, people still discuss about whether Perikatan Nasional can even be formed or not. I mean, while there's Pakatan Harapan has been put under immense scrutiny, why don't people ask the same question towards Perikatan? Heck, it's been more than 100 days and you can't even form a simple coalition. I mean, what coalition is this? It's just coalition which supports the Prime Minister. That's it. I mean, Pakatan Harapan, instantly when we won, we were registered immediately. It was so easy. I mean, before GE, we wanted to register ourselves immediately, but ROS stopped us, if you still remember. So, what's so difficult? I mean, that clearly shows that there's distrust, which will lead to political instability. So, I think Malaysians must be ready. Politicians must start focusing on issues which matter to the people and stop fighting for one another in order for us to save the Malaysian economy, to save young Malaysians who will suffer the most if we do not cushion their suffering.
When we talk about the sufferings and also joblessness, right? And also earlier on when I asked you about the social security system, some surveys has also showed that a lot of Malaysians do not save. And their savings will not last them even for a month.
Yeah.
What more to say, not just savings in a bank, what about even their contribution to EPF?
EPF and ASB, depressing. Yeah.
It's not there. So do you think that we need to properly shake up the whole social security support system itself? You know, when in this pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic, the first and the last will be on the cutting board.
Yeah.
For example, startups by young people, you know, they do all these startups, you know, this gig economy, they'll be the first one on the chopping board.
Yeah.
As well as the traditional ones, our aunties, our uncles, pakcik makcik, they cannot adapt to new technologies.
Exactly.
So, what will you propose?
I think at the moment when we are facing COVID, the priority may not necessarily be about savings. It's about surviving up until the next day, right? So that's where EPF has loosened its policy to ensure people can withdraw their money. And you see a lot more people withdrawing their money through EPF and ASB during tough times. Question comes post-COVID. Question comes post-COVID. Post-COVID, how then do we deal with savings? Because when a lot of people have spent their life savings to survive during COVID, how do we deal with things then? I think that's where I think there must be a bipartisan resolution to move forward, because it will be immensely tough, possibly unpopular, and tough to push through. But it's something which we need to seriously talk about openly from today onward. But to talk about savings today during COVID will be tough, of course, because people cannot afford to save. People must spend. People are thinking how to get through month by month. And I think saving is the least of their concerns.
Great. On a final note, I think generally there's a general sense of doom and gloom for future in Malaysia. Not just the politics. I mean, generally people are looking, can I survive tomorrow? Can I survive after this? The real impact of pandemic, of COVID-19, I mean, with the political turmoil, it's just a recipe of disaster. What would you say to many Malaysians out there, you know, on your final note, you know, hoping for, you know, what's new? I want to see something better for our country. What do you say to them?
Behind every cloud will always be a silver lining. I think the silver lining is the enthusiasm of young people to participate in political discourse and discussions. You said just now Parliament Digital was formed, and I think it's immensely successful. 6,000 quality applicants made up of young, multiracial, moderate Malaysians to show that there is genuine interest in nation building. And there are many other examples which we can use. So it's not that young Malaysians have tuned out. They are indeed more tuned in. It's just that they are frustrated. And I believe that this frustration, if channeled in a positive way, can lead to genuine nation building for all Malaysians. So I'm actually more optimistic. Yes, we will go through one of the toughest recessions. There will be joblessness. There will be businesses who will close down. But I think that's when young people can step up. Those who innovate will survive. Those who disrupt will overtake big traditional businesses. This is when young people with great idealism and ideas will be able to step up in the front lines and in the end replace the old people. So I'm more optimistic. I have faith that young people can do it, and they will do it. So there will be a new dawn for Malaysia.
That's a very nice way to end it. So, thank you very much to YB Syed Saddiq for joining me in this episode of BMI, and I wish him the best. And it was a great interview with you today.
Thank you very much, Norman.
So exhausted, but then again, you're just full of vigor. I mean, that is what we want to see in a lot of young Malaysians, isn't it? So, yeah, you're listening to Bicara Minggu ini, covering current affairs and politics, and you can listen to the stories and interviews on Spotify, Anchor, Google Podcasts, and also Apple Podcasts. For more updates and stories, if you have any suggestions, you can tweet to me at I'mNormGo. I am NORMGOH. And you can follow YB Syed Saddiq at Syed Saddiq. Tweet to him, maybe he'll reply to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Norman.